This is like my 5th attempt at doing this because I don't know how vloggers do it, man. I get embarrassed when cars drive by and they're watching me just walk around my car recording it. I feel weird. But we're going to follow through. All right. So, as you guys can tell, this is what I replaced the S2000 with. I'm going to give my explanation as to why, because I can tell from the basic mindset of a JDM car lover or just a car lover in general, for being the person that I am who drives the Canyons extremely aggressively, why would I go from S2000 to a MazdaSpeed3? I totally get that. So we're going to do a quick walk around. Obviously, I'm in the mountains. The 23 is right here. I just did some driving, my first drive with it, and I'm going to talk about that right now during the drive. We're going to take a drive down Potrero, which is that way. It's more of a kickback drive, but this would just be a little POV drive. And yeah, so this is a 2007 MazdaSpeed3. So that means it's the 2.3 liter turbocharged direct injection, 260 horsepower, 283 foot-pounds of torque. And there's a bunch of little baby features to it that make me love this car, and it's the reason why I replaced the S2000 with it. Basically, the paint is tits. This is the original silver. It was owned by a body shop owner, so he professionally painted the roof black, the wing black. The wheels are powder coated black. The car's all stock except for a cob intake and a Cork Sport like diverter valve. And there's a reason why I like these things to be stock. So we're gonna talk about so much stuff. So this is it, and we're gonna start the drive right now, and we're gonna get into like a lot of detail where I'm gonna explain everything about this car, and maybe you'll learn about this car. People seem to love this car given the reaction on my Instagram, but I don't think they understand this car and why I like it so much. So let's go for it. All right, let's start it up. So I think we're just gonna chit chat all the way through Potrero. So yeah, let's do that. It's gonna be a long video, but if you follow me, then I mean, it must be for a reason, and you want to hear what I have to say. So I appreciate you for that. All right, turn off traction control. There's gonna be a lot of traffic anyway. It doesn't matter. We're not speeding. I already got my run in for the night. I'll explain that too. But let's start with the origin of the MazdaSpeed3 for me. Now, growing up in the tuner scene, even though I was a teenager when this car first came out, and you would expect a teenager who loved Japanese cars to like this car, I hadn't even heard of it really. The turbocharged 4 cylinders that we would hear of are obviously the WRX and Evo, but the front wheel drive king with the turbo was the Neon SRT4. And I ended up coming across this because I was looking at SRT4s, and they just, you know, the thought of them makes me happy. But they're way too beat up, and they're just unrefined American muscle front wheel drive cars is pretty much what they feel like. So I've always wanted a Speed 3 since my friend Doherty had one. And that Tahoe just crossed the yellow line. Jesus Christ. So I don't know, like 6-7 years ago, my friend Doherty, he bought a 07 red MazdaSpeed3, and I was like, oh, cool, Speed3. At that point, I had come across Speed3s in the mountains, but they were always like big turbo, full bolt-on cob axis port, and all this crazy shit, and they weren't very good. His was stock, and at the time, I didn't have a car, or I was like in between cars or something. So he let me drive it, and I immediately became stupid fast. Like, people in the mountain already knew I was fast, and I showed up in the Speed3, and I just started slaughterhousing everyone and anything, and it was a brutal month. I was basically taking it up every night for a month. My friend just kept letting me drive it, and I loved it. And as a driver, I'm very intuitive. I'm not one of those really smart techie people, but I'm a very intuitive driver, and I immediately understood that being a guy who drove front wheel drive in the mountain pass my entire life. I drove NAs, and I drove turbos, and I drove supercharged, and anytime a front wheel drive was boosted, it just could not hold on to the grip around corners. It would spin. So I always knew a car needed an LSD, but on top of an LSD, I always thought they would need boost by gear. because I on Redline would spin tires, my Turbo Civic would spin tires, whatever. And those MazdaSpeed3s that I'd come across would spin tires. But in stock form, they have boost by gear in first and second, and then third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It lets it just all hang. And this thing has a baller LSD. Like, this LSD is just as good as the LSD in the Sentra SCR Spec V, but with double the power, double the torque, and boost by gear. This thing, in my opinion, and this is being honest, in my opinion, I've always said this, even before owning one, I'm not just being biased, but in my opinion, this was what the new Type R is, but back in the day, and just no one loved it because it's a MazdaSpeed3 and not a Civic Type R. This thing is a killer as a front wheel drive, but you cannot modify it for corners. Like, obviously you can do suspension, alignment, tires. That's just going to help a lot. It's going to improve the car tenfold. But I mean, don't ruin this car by putting power into it. The intake is fine, the diverter valve is fine, and this has a resonator delete, so it has a little bit of, a little bit of exhaust sound to it. What are you doing, sir? Are you letting me by? This thing is a monster. I'm telling you. And people don't understand how quick they are in stock form. Let me give an example. I'm going to give a recent example. As in, 15 minutes ago, I was going down the 23 and a Blabai WRX was coming uphill. And I just spent all night feeling the car out. And I was ready to get a little chase in. Now, mind you, this thing has bad shocks in the rear. They're not completely blown, but they're tired. And I think one of the wheel bearings is out in the back left. The brakes are like some sort of AutoZone nonsense because there's no bite and there's no like heat resistance to them. Like, these bitches fade. So, .3 basic fluid, crappy pad, 4-year-old, boring all seasons, right? And it's stock with an intake and a diverter valve, which this thing probably makes exactly stock numbers. And I turned around and I caught up to the WRX, and he was coilovers, wheels, tires, exhaust, intake, tune, all this crazy shit. And he got tired of me following him, so he tried to get away from me. And he got on it in a straight section, and he didn't, how do I say this? The Speed3 didn't hold its own. It didn't just hold its own. I closed the gap in stock form. And the way I've always driven the Speed3s is I never look at the tachometer. I shift when I feel it's time to shift. And I used to have Doherty look at the tachometer for me, and he would always tell me, bro, you always shifted at 6 instead of going to 7, because this thing falls on its face naturally at 7, and my butt dyno can feel that, because as a driver I can feel a lot. I can feel more than most people can. And so I'm only shifting, I'm revving this thing out to 6 and shifting, revving this thing out to 6 and shifting. Why? Because the torque, the turbo, which brings me to why I replaced the S2000 with a front wheel drive 4-door family hatchback. And it's because this fits my driving style, my natural driving style, more than an S2000 does. Now, S2000s require great drivers to bring out the best in them. Hence why I was able to go so fast in the S2000. But I never really was having fun. That thing is a precision machine. You have to be precise. You have to ride the razor's edge. You have to ring the F20C all the way out to fucking 9,000 RPMs to get anything out of it. It's torqueless, so you can never lug it. You always have to be high RPM, stressing the engine, and you have to just maintain balance with footwork. And it's a fucking mind fuck. And I've already driven on the ragged edge for 12 years, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And once you go boosted, it's hard to go back to NA. Having the Evo ruined me. Driving my friend's Speed3 ruined me, because having the torque from the turbos, it's intoxicating, and it's such a fucking pleasure to drive. Because even at this speed, it doesn't matter what gear I'm in. I just like, oh, straight away, turbo kicks it. We're fucking flying. I went through this straight section that my S2000 would top out at 110. And that was with momentum coming around a corner at 60 and blah, 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 blah. I came around that corner at like 45 and I just rolled onto the throttle in fourth gear and I hit 100 immediately. And I didn't stay into the throttle deep into the corner like I do in the S2000 because the tires are bad, the brakes are shit. So I had to be conservative. Also, that WRX let me buy and I just left him for dead. WRX, everyone, Subaru owners will tell you WRXs handle amazing. I think this handles better by a long shot. You're not going to pull out in front of me, are you? Okay. The MazdaSpeed3 is the ultimate in front-wheel drive fun when you want to go really fast, but you can't afford a Type R. It's better than a Cobalt SS, trust me. I had an Ion Redline, which is its cousin. Now, the Cobalt SS Turbo I never drove, and I'm assuming that thing is probably just as good as this, but at the end of the day, you go home knowing you own a Cobalt. And I grew up in a GM family. I still own a GM as a daily, and I hate the Cobalt. It's ugly. And it looks weird, and it stands weird, and the interior's bleh. Anyway. So, the way this thing fits my driving styles, and it brought me all kinds of good memories back tonight. Because I can drive at any pace, I can choose any line, and I can just use the torque or horsepower at any point to get back into precision driving, to get back into fast driving. This thing goes faster than the S2000 does with less effort. Now, can it corner with the S2000? Nope. But I don't give a shit. I don't care. The gap in the corners is not big enough to make the gap in the straightaways. Because when you can drive a front-wheel drive on the ragged edge, and most people can, it's quicker than you think. Now, if you put someone just as good as me in the S2000 and I chase the S2000, yeah, the S2000 is going to win. But I don't care about that anymore. I'm not looking for ultimate speed. I'm just looking for something. I was looking for something to put a smile on my face. And the Speed 3 always used to put a smile on my face. So I bought one, took it to the mountains, and I was just cheesing all night. Another thing with the S2000 is I'm 6 feet, 215 pounds. I'm at the limit of size for the S2000, and when you sit in it, you're cramped. And I hate how small it is in there. There's no pockets for you to put stuff in, and it's just, And I know young kids are gonna be like, well, why? That's not what an S2000 is for. And you're totally right. But I'm not a kid anymore. So I want something where there's pockets and cup holders that aren't in the way of the shift knob and a proper trunk and space to feel free. And I feel free in the Speed 3. It's so large in here. So large. Now back to the topic of power mods on the Speed 3. Once you do downpipe, exhaust, and a tune, and most idiots get rid of the boost by gear when they tune it, and it just knocks the front tires off every time it goes around the corner, even with the LSD. This thing is like a fucking front-wheel drive muscle car, but a tamed version of the SRT. This is like the power limit of front-wheel drive for cornering. Now you're thinking, well, the Type R has more. Yeah, the Type R is like, what, 10, 11, 12, 15 years newer than this thing? And it comes on, what, 245s? This thing is on 215 profile tires. 215, 45, 18. That's not enough tire. So this thing uses a simple equation. Boost by gear and baller LSD. Alright, this is the road I first learned how to drive on. So the tires are garbage, but we're gonna have some fun. The tires are gonna squeal, sadly, but who cares? There we go. Look at that. Roll into the throttle. Big boost. Brings you into the next corner. Roll into the throttle early so you're on boost on exit. All these things that I remember from back then. On throttle. 6,000 RPMs naturally again. Heel towing is a fucking breeze. This transmission is nowhere as precise. Look at this, look at this. Oh, this thing's a fucking animal. And it's stock suspension. Roll into the throttle. Triple digits. That's 100. Just like that. Just like that. This car is effortless. With the S2000, I would have had to rev match in a second, get it into VTEC, and let it rip all the way to 9,000 RPMs, and it's just it's so much simpler to go fast than this. It's unreal. It's unreal. And for the price that these go for, how can you beat it? I bought this for $5,000. $5,000. There's no way I could pass it up. I gotta turn the fucking defroster on. Holy shit. Breathing hard as hell. There we go. And the interior is beautiful. The gauges, the orange background with the blue accent. Oh. And the Mazda during this time period was ahead of their time on the interiors. I had an RX-8, and that interior, you felt like you're in a 2015, and that was a 2004. This is a 07, and it feels like I'm in a 2012, 2013. I wish my seats were in better condition. I mean, this car is old, but the design, and these seats are so comfy. I'm not sitting in a Recaro bucket race seat anymore. This is what I wanted. This is everything that I wanted, and I'm not even a little bit disappointed about replacing the S2000 with this. I'm not. This thing can do everything. I can be driving down the highway and a WRX can play with me, and I can hang with it. The S2000 can't do that. And this, I only have to downshift like 1, 2, and I'm gone. The S2000, you gotta make sure you're in VTEC, and VTEC's at 6. The VTEC should kick in at 4, honestly, in the S2000. And yeah, you can tune it, but you can't tune the AP1 without using an AP2. ECU, and that motor, when you break it, it's $8,000. This motor, when you break it, it's $3,000. And just, that thing's high strung. It's just ridiculous. This thing's just so much more simple. Now, I get it. If you're a kid and you just don't give a shit and you prefer the S2000, hey man, I'm with you. I'm with you. I get it 100%. Totally understandable. But for me, this is explaining why I replaced the S2000 with this MazdaSpeed3, and this is a Gen 1. The Gen 2 is not this car. I don't like the Gen 2. I would never own a Gen 2. It's prettier than the Gen 2. See, with the intake, like the previous owner told me, he's like, what I did to this car are just sound mods. He just wanted to hear the turbo. So without putting a fucking external blow-off valve, the ones that he just upgraded or updated the diverter valve with a cork sport and just did a carb intake, carb legal one. And now I'm assuming you guys can hear it. It's just, see, simple, very mature. This car is very grown up. I love it. I love everything about this car. Everything. I have no. If I was to be extremely competitive in this car, like I was when I was a kid, I would replace the intercooler, because this is a top mount intercooler on a car that doesn't have a hood scoop. That's ridiculous. That is stupid. So this thing, after one run, gets heat soaked. But I'm not competitively racing. I'm not going out and time attacking or going after my arch nemesis. I'm just trying to have some fun. And this car is fun. The S2000 is not, well, the S2000 is fun, but it's also serious. It's too serious. It doesn't have a fucking sense of humor. That's the perfect way to say it. The S2000 does not have a sense of humor. That's the S2000, the homie that you bring with you when you're gonna fight someone. This is the fatter homie that you take out with you and makes you laugh all night. And that's where I wanna laugh. I wanna have a good time. And boy, let me tell you, I am having a blast. Even the way this one sits, stock, and needing shocks and brake pads and brake fluid and tires, I'm still absolutely enjoying myself. And I just got the car today, and I already ordered some RPF 1s and some Falcon Zenith RT660s. So that's dope. And then later on tonight, I'll order my coilovers, and I'll order my brake pads, and I'll order my ATE.4, my favorite brake fluid. And we're ready to go. And that's all this car needs. That's why I went with this car. I don't need to spend thousands of dollars in upgrades. And, I want power. No, this has all the power I want. All the power. And okay, I drove it from Lancaster. No, not Lancaster. Lancaster? I drove it from really fucking far away to my house, and I got gas in Lancaster to Oxnard, from Oxnard to Malibu. And then when I got to Malibu, I drove nothing but mountains. I went up and down the 23 twice. I raced that WRX. I did the drive that I just did with you guys, and I've been heavy-footed here and there in the straightaways. I've driven 185 miles total, and I'm at half a tank. And I'm averaging 26.9 miles to the gallon. The S2000 that didn't have a fucking turbo on it averaged 23 miles to the gallon all the time. Ridiculous. I prefer this. Turbochargers make life fun. Be warned, if you love NA cars, don't go boosted, because once you go boosted, you're not going to want to ever go back to NA. I love this. Just roll into the throttle. Just like awesome. Very cool. Maintenance wise, this thing's just gonna need like I said, coilovers, pads, maybe rotors, brake fluid. I'm gonna do an oil change just to be safe. The previous owner said he changed it 700 miles ago, but I don't trust people. And motor mounts. I feel like one of the motor mounts is probably starting to go, so I'll be replacing that as well. So that's it. I don't want this video to go on any longer. I'm on my favorite little, these aren't canyon roads anymore. These are just little back roads instead of staying on the main roads. And I'm about 10 minutes from home. So I've talked your ear off. So now if you're wondering why I chose the MazdaSpeed3 to replace my S2000, now you know. That's why. And I hope now you have a better idea of MazdaSpeed3s and how unreal they actually are. And yeah, that's it. Alright, you guys, thanks for watching. I'm not going to tell you to like, comment, subscribe, because this is not a fucking vlog channel. I'm just a dude, and a lot of people follow me, and I try to record videos for you guys. So, at the end of the day, do whatever the fuck you want to do. But I hope everything is well with you guys. I hope you're all good. And I hope you're all happy. I genuinely do. Because I spent years of my life being unhappy. And it sucks. So I hope you're happy. Good night.